There we go. Sorry about that. I created a new scene for these off-topic things, and I didn't add in my mic. My mistake. All right, I'm new at this. If you came here for professionalism, sorry, I'm learning now. Sorry about that. Oh, wait a minute. I created a new scene for now. Something isn't muted. Things, and I didn't add in my mic. My mistake. There we go. Let's mute YouTube. Don't need to hear YouTube on a huge delay. Yes, I am streaming on both YouTube and Twitch. Pick your preferred platform. Either way, I'm just happy to see everybody in here. Welcome in. Got 6 people in here. We'll go ahead and start, I guess. I don't expect a whole lot of people in here. I would like to thank Ripped Redneck for allowing me to also post his announcements. Where am I at? Here in a little bit, we're going to open this up to discussion, and y'all are welcome to jump in. Probably to the regular VC. Go ahead and jump in there now. That way everybody can jump in. I'll just keep it muted for right now till we start talking. It's always a good thing when the older generation. Hey, I was around when the internet started. It's just, well, I don't know, there was a good while there where I was out of touch because I couldn't afford a computer. They're friggin' expensive. But I've been piddling with the internet now for what, 24 years? Got back into it around 2000. So I'm learning. Only been streaming now for a little over 2 years. Full time, somewhat. But anyway, Friday, or was it Thursday? Thursday, the Supreme Court came out with their decision in the CHEVRON deference case. Let's see, let's go ahead and take this down. Where's my thing? All these screens and what I need isn't there. Pull this up. Zoom. It's not gonna let me do it. All right. Anyway, and you're probably asking, well, what's CHEVRON difference and what does it have to do with me? You know, I buy my gas at BP. You know, CHEVRON difference is, let me see. When CHEVRON deference came in 1984, I believe. It's been, roughly 40 years. Under the CHEVRON doctrine, courts would defer to how expert federal agencies interpret the laws they are charged with implementing, providing their reading is reasonable, even if it's not the only way the law can be interpreted. Which basically is, a lot of these executive agencies can come up with these rules, and it has the force of law. And when I first heard this, I was like, yes, thank God. Because I am a strong 2A person, Second Amendment. I do not like the ATF. I don't like their overreach. And this pretty much slaps a lot of that down. Now, let me start off by saying this isn't going to change anything that's already in place. I've been doing some more studying. A little bit more came out today. Still, nobody's really talking about this. So I decided, okay, what the fuck? I'm going to do it. Pardon my language. This is 18 and older. If you can't handle the language, you know where the door is. You found it coming in. Where was I? Yeah, they're not gonna go back and relitigate every single little thing. But as court cases come up, as people do challenge these laws and rules, it's now up to the Supreme Court or the court system to interpret these laws. Beforehand, the executive agencies could, by using their experts, i.e. COVID, and all the mandates that came down from COVID, which, we found out later on was over politicized and used improperly. Just leave it at that. Go ahead, YouTube. Put the little banner up there on COVID now, because I said the C word. Anyway.
Hello again, everyone.
Whoops. We will use this guy. I found this guy here. He explained it pretty good. Gosh, I can't even remember his name now. Anyway, he's with a group. His channel's called Washington Gun Law on YouTube. And this is what he put out 3 days ago when it happened. We'll go ahead and listen to him. He can explain it better. I'm not a professional. I just play one on TV.
Welcome to Washington Gun Law TV. I'm Washington Gun Law President William Kirk. Thanks for joining us. It is 8 o'clock in the morning, and I am shooting a video here at the office. Don't think I've ever done that before. Why is that? Well, we have a huge, and I do mean huge, ruling out of the United States Supreme Court in the matter of Loper Bright Enterprises versus Raimondo. We have been talking about this case for over a year now. This is a huge case. A lot of people don't realize just how big this case is. As a matter of fact, I'm going to venture to say that this is the biggest ruling to come out of the United States Supreme Court since the Dobbs decision. The Dobbs decision was the one that overturned Roe v. Wade. The Chevron deference is dead. It is dead officially today, and that not only significantly ties the hands of the ATF behind their back, but also all the other alphabet agencies. I cannot express to you just how big this ruling is. So today, let's start geeking out on the opinion. Let's spend a few minutes and talk about the Supreme Court issues its biggest ruling this year.
Link to this video is in the description. Well, at least it is on YouTube.
Okay, hey, before we get going too far down the road, we're going down. Let's spend a minute and talk about federal agencies, because as we know, today was a bad day for all the alphabet agencies, and it's because, well, we've unconstitutionally delegated far too much power and authority, and the Supreme Court has finally reined that back in. Ask yourself, do you trust the ATF? Of course you don't. That's why you're watching this channel all the time. Do you trust the CDC in the post-pandemic world? Well, how about the FDA? Do you trust the FDA? Of course you don't. Well, maybe that's why you guys should all find out about what's got all the folks at the FDA spooked by what the folks at Black Forest Supplements are doing. See, it all comes down and us. What's and well, it's tremendous health benefit. And yeah, you're getting 2 studies of health, which talks about the tremendous benefits of NA and blood pressure. You want to turn NMN? Well, it's pretty easy to figure millions of dollars by shoving more. Started taking better care of those mountains of the benefits. On that link right there, or better yet, friends at Black Forest Supplements, and you buy friends at Black. Been waiting for this one for a long time. We're talking about the matter of Loper Bright Enterprises v. Raimondo. As you can see, a nice light read this morning. The opinion came out just a little over an hour ago. I've had a chance to skim through it. We're going to get right to it, but let's just get everyone to understand just how important this is. He got a smaller version.
Mine was 114
pages. Back in 1984, the Chevron case was decided by, at that time, mere 6 justices that heard that case on the United States Supreme Court. They basically said, hey, listen, when it comes to technical terms and trying to interpret statutes, we're going to defer to the administrative agency tasked with enforcing it. Translation, we're going to delegate authority away from the courts and back to the executive agency. Translation, we're going to go ahead and violate the separation of powers. Now, interestingly, Interestingly, this case has not been decided on a separation of powers doctrine, but once again, the Administrative Procedure Act has reared its head to save the day here, because this case has actually been struck down on Administrative Procedure Act grounds. Now, when you think about it, when you think about these three unique branches of government and how they're supposed to operate, giving deference to an executive agency to interpret laws does seem to be allowing the agencies to get a little bit outside their lane. It's one thing to give them respect, it's another thing to actually defer to their findings. And so, as Chief Justice John Roberts, who is the author of this opinion, pointed out, respect, though, was just that. The views of the executive branch could inform the judgment of the judiciary, but did not supersede it. In cases where a court's own judgment differed from other high functionaries, the court was not at liberty to surrender or waive it. Now, we had predicted that this was going to be a 6-3 vote, which is exactly what it turned out to be. It went down exactly as the way, but the grounds upon which the Supreme Court has thrown the Chevron deference out, well, we were wrong on that. We'll just be honest. We thought it was going to be really under a structural argument of how our country was intended to function. Instead, it comes down to, once again, a piece of legislation drafted and passed in 1946, the Administrative Procedure Act.
And this is also what they've been using to strike down a lot of the ATF's stupid rules. And apparently other agencies, because they knew this was coming up for a vote.
Congress in 1946 enacted the APA as a check upon administrators whose zeal might otherwise have carried them to excess not contemplated in legislation creating their offices. The APA prescribes procedures for agency action and delineates the basic contours of judicial review of such action. And it codifies for agency cases the unremarkable yet elemental proposition reflected by judicial practice dating back to Marbury that courts decide legal questions by applying their own judgment. As relevant here, the APA specifies that courts, not agencies, will decide all relevant questions of law arising on reviews of agency action. And there actually is a statute that says exactly that. That is 5 United States Code Section 706. As the Chief Justice points out,
look it up and read it. It's hard to read, though.
It prescribes no deferential standards for courts to employ in answering those legal questions, despite mandating deferential judicial review of agency policymaking and fact-finding. And by directing courts to interpret constitutional and statutory provisions, without differentiating between the two, Section 706, it makes clear that agency interpretations of statute, like agency interpretations of the Constitution, are not entitled to deference. So, does that mean that the courts are to absolutely, positively ignore what the administrative agency is saying about how they interpret the statute? Absolutely not. That is not what the court is saying. What the court is saying is we're not going to allow the judiciary just to defer to them. As the Chief Justice put it, courts exercising independent judgment in determining the meaning of statutory provisions consistent with the APA may, as they have from the start, seek aid from the interpretation of those responsible for implementing particular statutes.
Right. Now, they're not saying that they're not going to listen to these experts, but the courts are going to have to start doing their job. And that's how it was written in the Constitution, and I kind of agree with it. Opens another can of worms for a lot of stuff, but we'll keep going.
And when the best reading of a statute is that it delegates discretionary authority to an agency, the role of the reviewing court under the APA is, as always, to independently interpret the statute and effectuate the will of Congress subject to constitutional limits.
Congress being important, because in order to enforce something like that, these rules and regulations, they have to be a law under the Constitution. It has to be a law before the federal government can do it. Federal government already has way too much power that I think we need to cut back, but that's neither here nor there.
And so ultimately, where the Chief Justice and the majority of the Supreme Court has come down is the following. The deference that Chevron requires of the court's reviewing agency action cannot be squared with the APA. Chevron, decided in 1984 by a bare quorum of 6 justices, triggered a marked departure from the traditional judicial approach of independently examining each statute to determine its meaning. And the court points out that, listen, when Chevron was first decided, it wasn't really a landmark decision. It was an important decision. But over time, we began to make a much bigger deal out of it as we began to unlawfully delegate more and more authority to executive agencies. So as the Chief Justice writes, although the court did not at first treat Chevron as the watershed decision it was fated to become, the court and the Court of Appeals were soon routinely invoking its framework as the governing standard in cases involving statutory questions of agency authority.
In other words, they were pretty much making up things and deciding on how they were going to implement it. Whether it was the ATF, the Food and Drug Administration, the EPA, the FCC, OSHA, the National Labor Relations Board, DEA, ATF, the FAA. The list goes on, all the alphabet ones. They come up with these rules and they enforce them, and we gave too much power to the executive branch and the people under them. Yes, and the IRS. Thank you, Pius. That's one we forgot until Minette reminded me last night. I spent well over 12 hours studying all this stuff, and it about fried my brain last night.
The court eventually decided that Chevron rested on a presumption that Congress, when it left ambiguity in a statute meant for implementation by an agency, understood that the ambiguity would be resolved first and foremost by the agency and desired the agency, rather than the courts, to possess whatever degree of discretion the ambiguity allows. And that right there, folks, is the fox guarding the henhouse. Can you imagine the Congress actually intentionally drafting ambiguous statutes so that some nameless political bureaucrat can then steer the direction of the enforcement of the law? And that is what's been happening. And it's not exclusive to the ATF, folks. It is all of these runaway alphabet agencies. But of course, the problem was neither Chevron nor any subsequent decision of the court attempted to reconcile its framework with the APA. Chevron defies the command of the APA that the reviewing court, not the agency whose action it reviews, is to decide all relevant questions of law and interpret statutory provisions. And so ultimately, where the Supreme Court has come down is they say, listen, it's one thing to respect what the administrative agency is saying or arguing. It's altogether different just to defer to them completely. Chevron insists on more than the respect historically given to the executive branch interpretations. It demands that courts mechanically afford binding deference to agency interpretations, including those that have been inconsistent over time, and even when a pre-existing judicial precedent holds that an ambiguous statute means something. And so, yes, it is again a piece of legislation that was drafted in 1946 for more fair implementation of administrative rules that now gets us to this ruling. Chevron cannot be reconciled with the APA by presuming that statutory ambiguities are implicit delegations to agencies. That presumption does not approximate reality. A statutory ambiguity does not necessarily reflect a congressional intent that an agency, as opposed to a court, resolve the resulting interpretive question. Many or perhaps most statutory ambiguities may be unintentional. And when courts confront statutory ambiguities in cases that do not involve agency interpretations or delegation of authority, they are not somehow relieved of their obligation to independently interpret the statutes. And of course, if we take a look at how we structured our system of government, does an administrative agency who is under the purview of an executive, that being the president, really have any incentive to remain impartial? Of course they don't. They are trying to advance that particular president's agenda. And that goes for whether the president is a Republican or a Democrat. So as the Supreme Court pointed out, perhaps most fundamentally, Chevron's presumption is misguided because agencies have no special competence in resolving statutory ambiguities. Courts do. So
right, that's what the courts were set up for. That's for those who, hey, Xbox, 7-stream streak. Let's go. Going back to basic civics, we have 3 branches of government. We've got the executive branch, which is the president and all these little alphabet agencies under him. We've got the judicial, which is the court system, and we have the Congress. Congress is the one that makes laws, not the executive branch, and not their agencies. So Congress has to make the law, and then the courts help to parse it out, decide how it's going to be applied in different cases. It's taking power back and putting it where it was originally supposed to be.
So in sending the Chevron deference to its grave, the Chief Justice writes, "At best, Chevron has been a distraction from the question that matters. Does the statute authorize the challenge agency action? And at worst, it has required courts to violate the APA by yielding to an agency the express responsibility vested in the reviewing court to decide all relevant questions of law and interpret statutory provisions. Chevron has proved to be fundamentally misguided. It reshaped judicial review of agency actions without grappling with the APA, the statute that lays out how such review works. And its flaws were apparent from the start, prompting the court to revise its foundations and continually limit its application. Experience has also..."
Yes, they did. On Thursday, they came out with their decision, and they struck down Chevron deference. So these agencies just can't do things on their own anymore. Originally, it wasn't a bad idea. It gave them the power, to come up with rules and stuff like that. But it was abused. And just look at the ATF. They'd come out with one ruling, and then 6 months or 6 years later, they'll change it. It's like the whole the bump stock ban, I will say pistol brace ban. They said, yeah, those are fine. They don't break any rules. It's a good accessory to be on a firearm. And then they turned around and said, no, we decided that we don't like them now. And now all you people that bought them are now felons. It does away with that.
Shown that Chevron is unworkable. And so ultimately, in the coup de grace, the punchline from the Chief Justice, the ruling of the court is, the only way to ensure that the law will not merely change erratically, but will develop in a principled and intelligible fashion, is for the court to leave Chevron behind. Exactly. Now, as we know, there is a litany of cases that were previously decided upon the Chevron deference. Does that mean we get to do a do-over now on all of those cases? The Supreme Court has been very clear here that although they are going to change their statutory interpretation framework, that does not mean we're going to reopen any of the old cases, as the Chief Justice put it. By overruling Chevron, though, the court does not call into question prior cases that relied upon the Chevron framework. The holdings of those cases that specific agency actions are lawful, including the Clean Air Act holding of Chevron itself, are still subject to statutory stare decisis despite the court's change in its interpretive methodology.
Right. So they're still going to stand unless there's another court case involving that same issue. And the courts just might say, well, we're just going to go off precedent and vote this way and deny it. Or they can go ahead and relitigate it, let it go to the Supreme Court eventually, and have it decided, which is the way our government was meant to work to begin with.
Like I said at the very beginning of this video, this case is one of the most significant rulings to come out of the United States Supreme Court in decades. This case will significantly change the fundamental structures of how our country is run. This case will actually bring the operational functions of our country back more in tune with how our founding fathers actually intended it to be run. This case actually begins to alleviate that fourth branch of government known as the administrative state.
All right, the administrative state. Yeah, now I forgot what I was going to say. All right, continue on. Sorry.
The case, once again, is Loper Bright Enterprises versus Raimondo. We're going to link it up down below so that you all can geek out on it for yourself. Hey, maybe you got questions about this. If you do and you need to get a hold of Washington Gun Law, all of our contact information
Okay, what I was going to say, now this just affects the federal level, the federal laws. States can still do their own thing. That's the way we were set up. We were set up as a 50 state, well, at that time, 13 colonies experiment. Each state can do their own thing. And with as harsh as it sounds, well, if you don't like the way one state works, move to another state. Nobody's going to stop you, you know, or you either run or you vote people in to change these laws on the state level. That's the American way. That's how it works. A lot of the world doesn't run that way, but that's why we're also the greatest country on this planet.
Information is down there in the description box. Maybe you got an idea for a video we should be doing here at Washington Gun Law. If you do, go ahead and click on that link right there. Some of the best ideas we ever had, candidly, weren't our ideas to begin with. And then finally, and most importantly, let's everyone remember that part of being a lawful and responsible gun owner, like we talk about all the time here, is to know what the law is in every situation, how it applies to you in any instance that you may find yourself. Until next time, thanks for watching and stay safe.
Cool beans. Earlier, did I save those links? And of course, that one's a little right-leaning. You can tell he's definitely right. No, I didn't. Whoops. My mouse is so sensitive. If I bump it, it freaking clicks. Here we go. All right, here's what DeSantis had to say. Some of these videos coming up are definitely kind of left-sided, but that's okay. I'm open to listening to both sides.
Meaningful for Northwest Florida. I also just want to make a couple comments. Last week the Supreme Court issued a decision in a case that overturned a doctrine called CHEVRON deference, and the long and short of it is not to get bogged down in technical details, but who ultimately governs our society? And the outcry on the left over the repeal of Chevron or the overruling of Chevron really shows how they view society. And those of us who welcome the decision to overrule Chevron, we believe in, I think, a conception of government that our founding fathers envisioned. When you have a bureaucracy that acts against you, and if they're doing it in a way they don't have authority, you have a right to go and bring a lawsuit to challenge that, because sometimes people's livelihoods are at stake on this. They can impose punishing fines. There's a lot of things that this big, powerful bureaucracy can do. So the question is if they're coming at you and they're wrong on the law, do you have an ability to go in the court and have the court say, you know what, you're right on the law, and rule for you and give you relief? Or do you do this Chevron deference, which says, well, it doesn't really matter if you're actually right on the law. We are going to defer to what these experts in the bureaucracy think the law means or the regulation should mean.
Yeah. And this all came from the one case, the fishing case. Where the federal government says, well, if you're going to fish in this area, you need to have a monitor with you, somebody to go with you and make sure you're catching the right fish and you're doing it properly. And they said, okay, fine. But then they said, oh, by the way, you have to pay for that gentleman to be on your boat, which could cost upwards of $700 an hour, which is just ridiculous. And that's why they challenged this whole thing, because it wasn't a law. It was just one of these rules and statutes that it was just willy-nilly made up pretty much, and without any kind of congressional or judicial review.
These are people that are not elected. These are people that are not accountable. These are people that are, quite frankly, wrong about a lot of things. And so Chevron deference really empowered the administrative state. It empowered the bureaucracy, and it's helped the bureaucracy grow to the extent that it has, really uninterrupted for many, many decades. And so what this does is this puts on a better foundation the separation of powers. You go into court, you have a right to have that court apply the law as it's written. And if that means you win and the bureaucrats lose, then that's the way it's going to be, and that's the way it should be. So that was a really good decision. But the people that were carping about it, they want to have a rule by unelected, unaccountable, bureaucratic, so-called experts. That's who they think should govern society, and they want to insulate them from any type of accountability. And that's just fundamentally not the way our Constitution was designed. It wasn't what our founding fathers envisioned. And yes, this is just one piece. I mean, part of the reason the bureaucracy's grown so big is because Congress doesn't exercise its constitutional authority to rein it in. They don't like writing laws that are precise. They don't ever use the power of the purse, and ultimately that's going to be the most effective thing, you know, that can be done. But this was an important step, and people say, oh, well, you know, how could you not have bureaucrats or experts be deferred to? You know what? If bureaucracy acts against you, you go and sue, you win. If Congress doesn't like that outcome, they can always rewrite the law, and then you can hold them accountable to ballot box. That's the way this is supposed to be. So that was a good decision. I know there's going to be some more decisions that are come out later today, but I do think that that's something that will make a meaningful difference for those of us who believe that the federal bureaucracy is out of control, that it's unaccountable, and that it's outside the proper understanding of constitutional boundaries. You know, the other thing.
All right, that was DeSantis's view on it. Let's see here. What's the others? All right, well, let's see what CBS had to say about it.
Let's take you back now to the Supreme Court, where we are already getting in some rulings, and we are expecting some rulings on controversial cases. This morning, they did rule on one case involving homelessness and loitering laws that came down earlier this morning, and another one just came in. The Supreme Court has overturned a landmark 40-year-old decision that gave federal agencies broad regulatory power. Still on the docket, cases involving Donald Trump's presidential immunity claims and a case dealing with the federal obstruction charge used against hundreds of January 6th rioters. Defense attorney and former federal prosecutor Scott Frederickson rejoins me now to talk about this.
Supreme Court said
Scott,
he can't be tried for anything
that just came in. And we talked a little bit about this yesterday when we were talking about the EPA decision. What about this case? And you sort of previewed what we were going to see this time around.
Yeah. Well, this is a momentous decision, one that may not have a high profile like the immunity decision, but this case takes a sledgehammer to the power of federal agencies to interpret and administer the regulations that they're charged with enforcing. That may be the EPA, that could be the Labor Department, all the different agencies. What we're talking about here is what's called the CHEVRON doctrine. It dates back 40 years, and basically it said, look, when a federal agency is enforcing and administering a law of Congress and there's some ambiguity, courts have to defer to the agency that enforces that regulation for its interpretation of that regulation. This Chevron doctrine has been under attack by conservatives now for the last couple of decades. And today, the Supreme Court sided with conservatives. This removes a huge amount of power of federal agencies in their enforcement of the laws that they are responsible for. So this means we're going to see a huge rollback, lots of litigation about the different federal agencies in their enforcement of regulations.
All right, Scott Frederickson breaking it down for us. A monumental decision, perhaps not one as high profile as the last couple ones that we're expecting, but still an important one for people
very high
who
profile.
those regulatory agencies
were
in fact set up to protect. And I think that that's the real issue here. I know that we talked about yesterday the federal government and many conservatives feeling that the federal government had too much power and perhaps had overreached in some of those cases. But again, a lot of these agencies were set up in the wake of really terrible things that happened. Either we're talking about the SEC, where people suffered through the Great Depression, or what we were seeing in the late 1950s and 60s in terms of the environment when the EPA was set up.
Well, you're 100% right, Vlad. I think we're really going to see that in the area of the EPA, having to do with water pollution, air pollution. You know, people forget that back in the 70s, 60s and 70s, you know, our rivers were on fire. You couldn't see our cities because of smog. A huge reason that all got cleaned up were the laws that Congress passed and the regulations the EPA enforced. Now, the conservatives said, you've gone too far, though. The agencies are basically a power unto themselves. In this case, we had a New Jersey commercial fisherman who was required to take a monitor of the federal agency involved in fisheries along when he was out fishing. They didn't challenge the fact of having a monitor, but the agency said, and you have to pay them $700 a day. And that's what was challenged. And so conservatives said, look, that's not what the statute says. That's up to Congress, or at least the courts, to decide. Regardless, we're going to see a huge rollback of what the agencies have been able to achieve. And, you know, the EPA is probably the best example of what's going to change now in this country.
All right, Scott Frederickson, thank you, my friend.
It's going to affect OSHA and everything else, too.
CBS News campaign reporter and attorney Katrina Kaufman is standing outside of the Supreme Court. All right, Katrina, we've still got 2 other cases that we're waiting on. And, of course, if those cases come in, we're going to have a special report anchored by Nora O'Donnell. But describe to our viewers what they are and what is at stake here.
The biggest case that we are watching out for is the one involving presidential immunity, and this was brought by former President Donald Trump.
And they've since
presidents have immunity from criminal prosecution
since
for
ruled
their
on that.
official acts. The court will be making a determination about whether or not the president has immunity and potentially distinguishing between private acts and what counts as official acts. The short-term implication for this will be for the very important DC election interference case against Trump, and whether, when, and how it can move forward before the November election, if it can, because of course, if Trump is elected as the next president, he could get that case dismissed altogether. The other case that relates back to the DC election interference trial as well is Fisher. This is related to the January 6th Capitol riot. It was brought by one of the rioters, Joseph Fisher, a former police officer, who says that a statute that was brought against him related to the obstruction of an official proceeding doesn't apply to the January 6th Capitol riot. It's always been used related to documents and records, and this also involves 2 of the charges against Trump in the DC election interference case. So it could impact the shape of that case as it moves forward, depending on how the Supreme Court rules.
All right, let's see. CNBC was talking about this.
Our next guest is really surprised by the decision, says it'll send ripples across multiple sectors of the economy. Joining us for more is James Lucier, Capital Outflow Partners Managing Director, and NBC News and MSNBC legal analyst Danny Savalas. Welcome to you both. James, were you surprised?
I was not surprised that they did the ruling to repeal Chevron, but this is a big one. Roberts literally dropped the big one. It's total, complete, and across the board.
Okay. Well, basically, Sassy, what happened? There was a Supreme Court was hearing a case that went up through, you know, the court system of a fisherman trying to follow the regulations set forth by the Fisheries Act or whatever. And part of that was for him to have a monitor, somebody to watch over him while he fishes. And he had to pay for that himself, $700 a day, which for a small, if it's a mom and pop little boat, you have 3 employees, you probably can't afford that. Anyway, so they sued and they went up and they struck it down. The thing is, the basic rules are being interpreted by the executive branch, or were, under Chevron deference. They could make up their own rules and regulations that pretty much had the force of law. And unless you took it to court, you know, and spent millions and millions of dollars, you couldn't get it changed. Since they've struck down the Chevron deference, it takes that power back away from the executive branch and puts it back into both Congress. Now they have to actually submit bills to Congress. have Congress vote on it, and then if you have a problem, then you take it to court and it goes through the court system. Overall, the executive branch was given too much power. It wasn't meant to be like this, but they've abused it, and so they struck it down. I was jumping up and down happy about it because this affects the ATF. Everybody knows I am a big Second Amendment person. No, I'm not Republican. No, I'm not Democrat. I'm middle of the road, but I am right-leaning when it comes to my Second Amendment. And the ATF pretty much was making up rules and even changing their minds on rules, without deferring to Congress or the judicial branch for any of them. So pretty much doing whatever they wanted to do. And it's been going on for 40 years. And like I said, it's gotten worse and worse and worse. And they're finally putting their foot down. It's going back to the way the Constitution was written. Laws are written by the Congress and voted on and then sent to the president for his signature. And then if you have a problem with that law, then you use the judiciary and contest it. It's big news because it went all the way to the Supreme Court. The thing is, it affects all the alphabet agencies: the FDA, EPA, FCC, OSHA, National Labor and Relations Board, DEA, ATF, FAA, FBI, IRS, all of them have been, just for the last 40 years, been making their own laws and enforcing them and interpreting them the way they want them done, which a lot of the times has been because they work for the president. So it's always been kind of political, because those are unelected individuals. The president was elected, but those individuals weren't. And it puts the power back in Congress and the judiciary where it's supposed to be. It's a step in the right direction. And I think eventually we need to cut down the power of the federal government altogether, in my opinion. Federal government was never supposed to be this big, wasn't supposed to be this overruling and overbearing. Our federal government had just a couple main jobs, because each individual state was supposed to run itself. The federal government was just there to help secure the homeland, provide for national defense, help negotiate treaties with foreign countries. And what was the other one? There was one more. I can't think of it off the top of my head. I'm an idiot. But this was a very big thing. Not too many people are talking about it. I found a couple news clips. I only found that one video put out by a lawyer in Washington State that actually broke it down pretty good. But nobody's really talking about this, other than the left. Now they're screaming that, okay, now the EPA doesn't have any rules, so we're going to pollute the air. No, because all the old rules for now are going to stay in place unless they're challenged properly through court or Congress actually does its job and go, wait a minute, that's not how we wanted that to be, stuff like that. So that's why it's such a big decision. And of course, Congress are elected people. If we don't like the way they vote, we vote them out in 2 to 4 years. These other agency heads, and they're in there at the will of the president. So that everything's going to be political. They just abused it. They've abused their power, and Supreme Court spanked them for it. And granted, right now the Supreme Court is kind of stacked in the Republicans' favor, but that's just the way it went. When Trump was in office, he ended up replacing 3, 4 of them of the 9. It's just the way it happened. Every president, it has that power to nominate judges, and Congress approves them or disapproves them. But that's just part of the separation of powers. All right, we'll go on and see this guy. Capital Alpha Partners Managing Director. All right, let's see what he talks about. What part of the sky is falling on his head?
It's not nuanced. It's not, well, sort of, kind of, let's adjust things. It's like Chevron is gone. The courts are in charge of interpreting federal statutes. The agencies have to listen to the courts. This is a complete reversal of Chevron, and it'll have great impact over time.
That's what struck me as well, was the nature of it. This has been a court that in some ways has been a little bit cautious, and they did not at all kind of nod towards what others have said. Hey, deference to the 40 years of history. No, they go back to that ruling, say it's overturned. Where does that now leave? I mean, which agency would you think is immediately most vulnerable, or which rules immediately do you think stand to be most challenged?
Is that for me, Colleen?
Yes, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, absolutely. EV regulations, I think, are most at risk and soonest at risk. We can see those get to the Supreme Court by various pathways as soon as this fall. Otherwise, I think the EPA's power plant regulation is also very vulnerable to a stay. And finally, the idea of climate regulation through a whole of government system where you try to find statutes that give you some basis for doing what you want and you interpret them creatively. All of that is in big trouble now.
Danny, what would you...
Yeah. So, in other words, the president or the EPA just can't say, all right, no more nuclear power plants or no more coal-fired. You know, they were making it up as they went along. They did whatever politically suited them at the time. Now they have to do it properly. They have to go to Congress and get a bill established. Let Congress fight out the details. Now, they can assist, have their experts in there, but Congress can also bring in other experts. And they'll debate the terms of the law. And then once the law is written and signed by them and the president, then if you have any problems, then you can challenge it through the judiciary. It's just the way things were supposed to run, in my sense. Right. It renews the balance.
What you add?
This was always about who decides the law. And ever since Chevron was decided, where the law was ambiguous, the courts gave deference in interpreting the law to regulatory agencies with really two main ideas. Number one, the agencies usually have the experts. So if we're talking about an agency devoted to fishing, that's the agency that has the people who know about fishing. And the second thing is that those people in those agencies are accountable to the extent that they can be fired. Federal judges they serve for life. They're appointed and serve until they're impeached or they die or step down. So they don't have the same accountability and they don't have expertise. But what they do have is a constitutional directive to be the only branch of government that interprets the law. Executive agencies traditionally don't have that prerogative. But ever since Chevron, when the law was ambiguous, there was that deference to those federal agencies.
Right.
That is.
This also means Congress needs to start writing laws that aren't ambiguous. They need to get the details in there, or at least more than they have now. They just can't say, okay, pollution's bad, you guys deal with it. You know, it doesn't work that way.
Is no longer the case. Now it is the courts that decide the law. Chevron was on the chopping block for years. This came as no surprise.
But let me just stop you there.
They've been trying to get
so people understand it, and those following this obviously know the stakes. But broadly speaking, when the law from the legislative branch is at all unclear, it's allowed the executive branch to increase its power. In other words, to increase the political power, the power of those who are holding the office for that 4 or 8 year period of time in a very broad way. That's why we look and say, what's the impact of the SEC going to be? What's the impact of this and that across markets? How much does this ruling now trim the sails of that power in a very substantial way, or only at the margin, Danny, do you think?
Yeah, you bring up a really good point. We learned in civics class in school that it's the legislature that makes the laws, but that's not entirely true in our system. We know that judges can make law by deciding cases, but the executive branch technically makes law. When Congress passes a law, the executive branch interprets it through its agencies. They put out regulations, the Code of Federal Regulations, for example, and those have the force of law. So the executive branch, in that sense, does create law through its agencies, and Chevron stood for a deference by the courts, charged with interpreting that law to those agencies. Now, this case It's been 40 years since Chevron. This totally upends that approach. It doesn't necessarily mean the mass chaos. It could, but not necessarily. Even Justice Roberts noted at oral argument that, look, Chevron doesn't even come up that often. But there's a really good point to be made there. What the heck does Justice Roberts know about business and regulations on the front lines where it's actually happening? He, of course, is in the cloisters of a federal judgeship, so he doesn't really know it on the ground the way people who actually live.
No, but they sit down, they study the law, they talk to people, and, they seek out experts on both sides. If it looks like it's a political thing, he'll seek out experts on both sides and talk to them. Or the court does that as a whole. It's not like, all right, I'm a truck driver, so guess what? Tomorrow I'm going to write laws on how tall your grass needs to be. That's kind of stupid. That's not how it works. Am I eating cheese? No, I'm not eating cheese. I'm eating pretzels. I do have cheese, but I haven't cut it up.
Live it, know it.
James Lucier, what would you add? And beyond kind of the climate areas that you've mentioned in particular, where they might have taken advantage of that gray area, what are some other areas that investors might need to pay attention to?
Great examples are network neutrality, a lot of healthcare regulation where the CMS or some government agency gets the opportunity to make decisions on healthcare. Labor law, it really is, as you said, Kelly, comprehensive and across the board. The climate tends to come up because that's an area where we have no new laws. We're trying to do climate.
Yeah, but it doesn't change anything that's already in law, that's already been established, until someone challenges it in court. Then it goes through the courts. So it's not like we're erasing everything. We're not starting with a clean slate, and throwing everything out. But they have to answer to them now. They just can't willy-nilly interpret it the way they were before and get away with it.
Policy based on laws from the 1970s. So that is critical, but it really does apply to telecommunications, to healthcare, to labor, and to financial services. And a good financial services example would be the climate disclosure rule. I'd like to add two things. One is that we don't know how far back this decision would reach. There's another decision coming up called Corner Post versus the Federal Board of Federal Reserve Board of Governors that will tell us just how far back some of these decisions could be challenged. And then also there is a rule for the states. We talk about Congress, the executive branch, and the judiciary. The argument is that Chevron has diminished Congress, has preempted commerce, and it's also allowed the courts to fail to serve their function. But if you look at these big cases challenging EPA regulations, they're all being brought by groups of states that feel that the states have been losers to Chevron too.
Interesting.
Another good example of that would be the Good Neighbor Plan, which the court stayed yesterday. 25 states said, hey, what about us? This is not fair to us. And it sort of pre-shadows where we're going, giving not only the three branches of the federal government, but the states the rightful authority too.
And Danny, it's interesting coming in tandem with the debate last night, because there are those who are already asserting that if Trump were to win in the fall, his administration under his administration, these powers could be substantially reduced, the agency powers. Do you think that's a possibility?
Yes.
Yes. I mean, no surprise that if Trump fully grasps
Republicans
what's
and
going
Democrats
on with this Chevron decision, then yes,
he
might use that
decision
as justification, or it might embolden him to enact policy that would be essentially immune from agency interpretation. Now, look, that doesn't mean that agencies won't still issue regulations, and it doesn't mean that they don't still have the force of law. It just means that when they're challenged in court, that the court reviewing them has the primary responsibility for determining the law. They don't have to show that deference to the agency interpretation, because under Chevron, as pointed out at oral argument, all 9 justices could interpret the law one way, but they would be forced under Chevron deference to defer to a non-judge, an agency, an unelected, unappointed agency's determination of what those regulations are. So regulations still exist. they'll continue to exist. It's just what happens when they get challenged in federal court.
And we can imagine it will invite a lot of challenges now, as Kagan wrote in her dissent. Long-standing precedent at the crux of administrative governance falls victim to a bold assertion of judicial authority. So, quite the day. Danny Savalos, James Lucier, thank you both very, very much for explaining it. We appreciate it.
All right, YouTube, quit making me want to go down a rabbit hole. So that was 2 days ago. Did I do this one? I don't know. Let's see.
Decision could actually undercut federal agencies, including the FDA. Joining us right now for more on this is former FDA Commissioner and CNBC contributor, Dr. Scott Gottlieb. And Dr. Gottlieb, thank you for being here. I wanted to talk to you about this, not just in your role as the former FDA Commissioner, but also as someone who used to work at the American Enterprise Institute, which takes the view that big government's not always a great thing. And I just wonder how you are looking at this decision that was originally brought by fishermen in the Atlantic who were unhappy with having to pay for monitors who were watching over what they were hauling in. Why don't you talk through how you see all of this and what it means?
Right, and I'm still at the American Enterprise Institute. Look, I think a lot of conservatives viewed this as a way to constrain the administrative state, that regulatory agencies had expanded the scope of their authority into new areas that Congress hadn't clearly delineated. And now agencies aren't going to be able to do that. When you were a regulator, so when I was at FDA, if we issued rulemaking and we were interpreting the statute in areas of ambiguity to try to apply our regulatory oversight to new areas of supervision, new product areas, we generally, as long as we went through rulemaking, we generally felt that the courts would defer to us under Chevron doctrine. And that was a reason to go through the rulemaking process, so that deference would attach. Now that presumption no longer exists, and so you're going to have to go back to Congress in many cases, get explicit authority if you want to extend the agency's jurisdiction into a new product area. Now, with respect to FDA specifically, I would expect that the courts will still defer to FDA on fact-based decision-making with respect to the drug approval process or medical product review. Courts and Congress has given.
Oh yeah, the courts are still going to listen to their experts, but the court can also bring in other experts and talk to them too. It's not going to be just one-sided anymore.
The agency broad grants of authority in those areas to make fact-based, science-based decisions. But when the agency is trying to delineate its regulatory supervision over new product areas, for example, laboratory-developed tests or certain food safety rules, I think those are the areas where the agency's authority now is going to be more ambiguous. They're going to be challenged. And Congress ultimately is going to have to come in and probably re-legislate some of these areas to make sure that the agency's jurisdiction and its authority in places where you want the agency to be regulating, where it's very clear.
Could you have gone after Juul the way you did in their marketing towards kids
Sassy, here we go.
New ruling? Or this
It's
ruling
quite
being
possible. Right. So one of the rules that could very likely be challenged is the agency's efforts to try to regulate flavored vapes, for example. A lot of what we did when we went after Juul was taking enforcement actions under the existing statute and regulations, which
they
I
said
think
Juul
was
couldn't
pretty
make flavors
ironclad.
that kids might like.
Firm ground, and we were challenged in courts, and we
which
prevailed,
I thought was stupid.
not under
they
Chevron,
did prevail though.
Deference, but I think that there have been some rules that have been promulgated in the
They're trying to do away
years,
with menthol cigarettes,
particularly around flavored tobacco
I'll be
products,
damned.
where the agency could face a challenge. That would be one of the more immediate places I think you'll see some litigation now.
Is smoking good for you? No. Do I do it? Yes. And I've been doing it for so long now. It's not feasible for me to quit. You know, that and quitters are losers. Quitters are spitters.
As a result of this decision, you know, you led at the top with the politics of this. It's interesting to just go back to 1984 when this doctrine was first established. It was actually conservatives that were fighting for it. Because they felt that the courts were second-guessing regulatory agencies. Remember, those regulatory agencies were under the control of a Republican president at the time, and they're also good for testosterone and not the courts. And so now you see the politics of this reversed. To your point,
believe it or not, because it is a stimulant. Let's see if there's any more. I think that was about it that I saw, unless there's some new ones. Oh, here's one. Oh, that was 3 days ago too, though. I'm not seeing anything new. I kind of waited because I couldn't find a whole lot of information about all this. Been looking off and on through the weekend. Well, wait a minute. Well, that's with Trump's immunity ruling. We saw that one on the EV regulations, which they can still make regulations. They just, the courts can interpret them now instead of deferring to them. Did we watch this one?
Now, obviously,
No.
Democracy Forward looks at a number of issues and not just abortion. So I want to make sure we spend a few minutes on the Supreme Court decisions that were released this morning. There were a number of them. What stands out to you? Is there one or two that everyone should?
Yeah, I had to do a lot of studying on this because the only thing, honestly, I live by myself in the woods and I like it. I like to stay out of touch to a certain extent. I'm only really educated on what's been going on recently with the Second Amendment, and I guess I need to get out of my box and start paying attention to all of it, especially in an election year. I think everybody needs to be armed with a little bit of knowledge when you go vote. We're just not voting for a guy A or guy B, in this case, which one has a pulse and which one doesn't. You know, you know. If I'm your favorite old man hermit, well, thank you.
A number of them. What stands out to you? Is there one or two that everyone should know the top line takeaways for?
Absolutely. I would want your viewers to know about the two cases that were decided this morning called Loper Bright and Relentless. They deal with what some people may think is a very wonky issue, but it's a really fundamental issue for all of us as Americans, because they deal with the way that our government operates to protect and serve the people in this country. This morning, the court overturned 40 years worth of precedent in these cases and made it harder for our federal system to deliver for people. It essentially overturned a legal principle that stands
Xbox
for
with the raid.
That,
Welcome
when
in,
Congress
Xbox.
passes a law and federal agencies
Welcome
are
in, everybody.
entrusted to implement that
Hold
law,
on,
whether
let's-
that is.
I think I fucked that up. There we go. And we can do the other one too. There we go. All right, somebody else did it for me. Thank you, Pius. We're discussing last Thursday's, I guess it came out Friday morning, Thursday's decision on the Supreme Court to strike down Chevron deference and limiting the executive branch's authority in interpreting the rules and how they go about. They're talking about, like this girl here, she's saying, oh, it's limiting the executive branch's ability to help people. No, it's curtailing their ability to regulate us even harder.
Worker protections, anti-discrimination protections, food and drug safety laws that the FDA, like mifepristone or other things, that those agencies are accorded some deference when people seek to challenge their actions in court. Right. Of course, we know agencies can't act unlawfully, and there are a number of challenges that might be appropriate. But for 40 years in this country, courts have generally deferred to the subject matter experts and to the agencies on certain certain questions.
For
today,
40 years,
the
out of
court dealt the
250.
American people a blow by overturning that precedent. And that essentially means that you will see more litigation, likely more litigation like the one we've seen on mifepristone,
That's
where
a good thing.
Special interests file in their hand-picked court and seek to undermine the FDA or undermine other federal agencies' abilities and expertise and abilities to deliver for people. So we're watching that one really closely. Of interest to your forum's viewers, we represented more than 200 organizations that represented more than 250,000 small businesses, who were very concerned.
So that makes you important.
That if the court did what it did this morning, that this would really unsettle their ability to grow and thrive and compete because of the chaos.
Like I said, this didn't reverse any law or regulation that's already in effect.
One to definitely know about.
This goes for future things, or how people are going to challenge the current ones. It really didn't. It didn't change as bad as I thought it was gonna change. See, I've been looking at all this shit, and now all I have is fucking new shit in my feed. What the fuck? I don't want to hear most of this crap. Hearing people cry and who not crying. But anyway, I want to know what y'all think about it. 20 people in here. Let's fucking go. I think we got one over. Yeah, one over on YouTube. Feel free to jump in the Discord. We are in just the regular VC. If I spell it right, god damn it. That, and I meant to call. Thank you. I meant to call and find out about my glasses today, but I forgot. I got tied up in setting this up and getting the cats ready for their appointment that I thought was supposed to be tomorrow, but they never made the appointment. So back to what, August 12th now. Yeah, shit happens. Hey, Pius. Oh, hold on. Let me fix my audio. First person in always gets messed up. Oh, I didn't even hear you through those speakers. Where's my headset? There it is. Hello, Pius. So, what do you feel about all this? Yeah.
Four years of X under, President 1, and then President 2 comes in, and you're going to have his special interest or his,
right. It won't
cronies
be going back
or people.
And forth is bad now. I think it's going to be a little more mainline.
And I'm glad that they said, it's not just going to be like overnight, or we're going to go back and look at some of the previous cases.
That's what I was afraid of. Like, what does this do? Just drop them all and we got to start all over from scratch? That would have been a nightmare.
Yep. They're basically like, what happened, but going forward now.
Right, we're going to do it this way, which I think was a smart move. And it took me until today to figure that out. Maybe if I had read all 114 pages of the decision.
Right.
But hell, right now I'd still be on page 25.
Come on, Ash.
And there are a lot more people out there who are probably better at breaking this down than I am, but nobody's doing it.
Yeah.
So I figured I'd jump in on it. And maybe they're waiting. Maybe they're waiting to find out more information like I was, because the information's coming out really slow. Really slow. Because nobody's freaking gotten through the document yet. Thank you, Sassy.
Well, and I think.
Go ahead.
And I think it could be one of those like, well, it doesn't directly impact me, and it's more of, okay, well, the courts are just saying we're going forward. This is how we are doing things.
Right.
This is how we're interpreting the laws going forward. So maybe it's not as big as some of us are thinking.
Right.
Or maybe it's bigger than some people are thinking. I don't know. But, I think people are more focused on like the Supreme Court's decision about what a president can and can't get charged with.
Yep. Which could be a whole nother bracket. We can talk about that too. They decided that presidents do have immunity against these charges. So pretty much his case just got flushed down the drain. The conviction's gone. He's not a felon. You know, and the liberals are freaking pissed. But you know.
Well, but I mean, I think it's active president.
Yeah. But that's weird because
I mean, it's
all right. Has he been convicted? Yeah, they convicted him. He just hasn't been sentenced yet, which could take 6 to 9 months, and by then he might be in the White House.
Right.
Which means he's covered and they can get rid of it. I think he's going to win it on appeal anyway. There was a lot of mismanagement with that whole case, I think.
Possibly. But I mean, like,
it was all political.
I saw a meme. Take the politics out of it. Before, I saw a meme that said, something to the effect of, okay, so he has 34 felonies. I still support the 56 felons that started this country.
Right. Exactly. Spot on. For y'all that don't realize that our founding fathers were pretty much felons in the eyes of the British. We were traitors.
Yeah, like everyone that signed their name to that document.
Oh yeah, they signed their own death warrant. They knew that they could have been, captured and killed.
And a lot of them, were killed, or captured, or made destitute.
Yep.
But
a lot of them lost.
If it wasn't for those 56 felons,
right,
we wouldn't be here today, discussing one. Yeah, he's convicted.
Yeah. And like I said before, I'm a firm believer we need to go back to scratch anyway. We need to start over. I mean, you can't just you can and you can't, but it's. I love my country. I hate my government. I hate what it has become.
I agree.
The federal government is way too big, way too intrusive. And I'm going to go ahead and say it. The EPA needs to go fuck themselves. It has already been proven that humans have done very, 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 very little to even affect the climate on this planet. We are constantly in a state of climate change and flux. We go through pretty much like seasons. Temperature goes up, the temperature goes down. And it just so happens that the last couple of years, the temperature's gone up by 1/10 of a degree, or something stupid like that. Everybody says, oh, this is the hottest summer on record. No, it's not. Just on record in the last 100 years. I mean, they've barely been keeping track of this stuff for a little over 100 years. So, I mean,
you had the mini ice age. You've had different points throughout the history of the Earth that climate has fluctuated severely.
Right.
And humans haven't been around.
Right. So
they have, but it's like they haven't even had the ability to impact it like we're quote unquote doing right now.
Yeah. And if you believe in a higher power, maybe that's the way he designed things to work. He wanted things to rise up and fall, especially if they got stupid, And honestly, our world's in a sad shape right now, in my opinion.
Well,
absolutely.
People just need to learn to agree to disagree and concentrate on themselves. Personal responsibility.
What?
Yeah. Tell me about, in fact, right now, I'm going to add that in there. That's going to be a new hashtag for my thing. Which one can I get rid of? Get rid of battle boats.
Oh. Not battle boats.
Yes, sorry. We're going to type in personal. Whoops, if I can type right.
Did you get rid of COD?
Yes, COD. Yeah, COD's not in there. Other than like playing with friends and stuff like that. I now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oh, okay. I still have room for one more. All right, we'll put battle boats back in there.
Yay! Not that it really, really matters, but
You know, it's the
Obviously, I'm not playing
concept.
video games tonight. But go ahead, Sassy. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're good. It's just the concept, I think, in today's society is if I disagree with somebody, I have to demonize them and make them a horrible person.
Right. We have to
It's
cancel them. Oh, ooh,
the concept of agree to disagree. Like
shame.
my best friend and I in Arizona, we are literally on the opposite ends of the political spectrum. And we just honestly, we don't talk about it. But the discussions we do have, we can at least hear each other out. And it's just like, holy shit, is that so hard to do?
I mean, I got friends that don't believe in the Second Amendment, but they don't tell me to take my gun off either. I mean, they trust me enough not to shoot them. So they're just like,
exactly.
Let him alone, fine. And don't piss me off and I won't pull my gun.
Well, and that's
again, personal responsibility.
Right. Exactly.
That's the other thing. Like, if you educate people about gun safety and how to properly use a gun,
right?
Because that's all it is. It's a tool.
You're right.
Exactly.
This is just a tool.
Educate people.
Just like a hammer or a drill or anything else. It's just a tool. Now, I can lay it here on the desk. It can sit there for 15 years and it's not going to hurt anybody. It's not going to do a damn thing until some idiot picks it up and does something stupid like points it at his head or points it at somebody else. That's how accidents happen. But like you said, education.
I want to say I had a Facebook memory pop up the other day, and even when our son was like super young, we drilled that kind of safety.
Yeah.
And the memory that popped up was he lectured me about gun safety on a Nerf gun because I had my finger on the trigger. And it's like, that is how ingrained we have taught our son is gun safety, gun safety, gun safety.
Yeah. Now my daughter can't stand guns. Well, it's not that she hates them. She just doesn't want one. She doesn't want one around her. But like when I get a new gun, she'll look at it. She'll clear it. She knows all the gun safety rules, and she wants, she'll look at it, and she knows not to point it at people. I mean, she's educated. She just chooses not to exercise that right, which is her right.
Exactly.
And sorry, I keep going back to the Second Amendment. It just happens to be what I'm most versed on, folks.
Well, it's one of the most important amendments.
Right. It is the teeth of the whole Constitution. Without the Second Amendment, we have no way of backing it up. And it is our duty as citizens of this country to rise up if our government gets stupid. Now there's a debate on, how far stupid it has to get before that happens, because I don't want to see another civil war. That was bloody. That was nasty. Too many brothers on brothers. I mean, we killed each other, which was just stupid. But at the time, nobody else wanted to listen. So, and of course, now they claim the whole thing was over slavery. Go back and read your history books, folks. And slavery was just a small part of it. The South just didn't want to be told by the North what the fuck to do. The whole separation, of states. Hey, one state does one thing one way, one state does the other way. The federal government shouldn't get involved.
To a point.
All right, like what? Where should they get involved?
Interstate trade.
Okay, yes. Okay, yeah, they do. They have to manage that. And,
well, the whole point of the federal government was to oversee and manage, not to micromanage and intrude in every single part of everybody's day-to-day life.
In fact,
and
the third thing I was looking for was to help resolve disputes between the states. Thank you. Sorry. Continue.
Yep.
Y'all made it pop in my head. Thank you.
Well, like I said last time we were talking on the night of the debate, I don't think anybody's had a damn civics class or government class. And I know it was like
and it's not their fault, but it's our fault.
But just what gets me is the ignorance in today's level that it's at.
Yeah.
It's ignorance is a willful choice, and it's like,
well, the problem is, like, that's one reason why I was showing some of the videos from like Forbes and CNN and NBC or CSNBC and all that, because
yeah,
that's all some people hear. They don't look for things on their own, and they're gonna hear. They're all they're hearing out of this. Oh no, they're gonna deregulate things, so we can't have EV cars, or we can't force people to buy EV cars now. Which don't get me started on that.
No.
Because right now car makers are limited on how many vehicles they can put out. They have to have so much a percentage of electric vehicles by 2027, maybe 2026. I don't know. That's
I thought it was like 2030 or 2035. I thought, but I don't remember.
Things. That's what we'll see. It was different for each vehicle. That's one reason why there aren't as many trucks on the road now. Everybody's gone to SUVs. They did away with all the big trucks. Well, you can only sell so many of them now. They have restrictions on the car manufacturers for that, which is just friggin' stupid. If
it's
I
like
want to drive
anti-capitalism.
a gas guzzler, and friggin' pay $100 to fill it up every other day, god damn it, it's my right.
Sorry, I'm turning down the echo on my iPad. I got your stream running on my tablet.
That's all right. Usually it's me. One of my tabs is usually open somewhere or has the volume up.
Well, I had the stream going on my phone, but I was switching it over to my iPad, but I realized my iPad was dying, so I had to plug that in.
And I got a new phone now, so I have a phone.
Did you go get a cheapy Walmart phone?
No, we won't go into that.
Oh, I'm sorry, I asked.
The Walmart phone was supposed to go back today, but it was so damn hot and I didn't feel good and I forgot it. It's going back. No, I finally got my Pixel 8. It actually came in early.
Damn time.
Yeah, it came in Saturday instead of it was supposed to be like Monday or Tuesday. So
yeah, it's stupid hot here as well.
And for those of you that don't know, I've had 2 heat strokes. I don't do well at all in the heat. The heat literally makes me sick. It gives me headaches, makes me nauseous, makes me lightheaded. And nobody wants a lightheaded ashbot running around with a firearm.
Not particularly.
Or naked in the pool. We won't go there either. But
I would say your poor neighbors, but they're far enough away.
Yeah.
I don't want to traumatize the deer, though.
Yeah.
Oh, last night, or was it last night or the night before? Or it might have been the debate. I can't remember. I sat out in the pool for hours. And it wasn't 30 minutes after I came in, the deer started poking their heads out of the bushes. It's like,
of
all
course.
Right, Daddy's gone. Let's go eat.
Is the naked old man gone?
Yeah, is the naked old man gone yet?
Minus the trauma.
Let's see, where did it go? Wait a minute. That stream is not available. What the fuck? Is my stream not up? Okay, yeah, still up. It says Monday morning, but I just haven't changed it. Yeah, birds.
Okay, so what's temperature where y'all are at? I'm curious.
Right now it's showing my little weather station here is showing 82 degrees outside and 78 in the house. With the air.
And mine's showing 83.
Yeah.
They're supposed to be weather.
Although today the humidity has come down. It's only 54% humidity outside. Yesterday it was through the roof.
Only.
But we're supposed
Mine
to have
says
4 or 5 days of hot weather.
Mine says 94 right now.
Ouch.
Man, look at you.
I don't know how hot it got today because my little thing doesn't show highs and lows.
I think y'all's humidity is so much worse than ours is here, though, is I think the humidity's finally come down.
Yeah, ours finally came down since the rain has moved. And then we've had a pretty good breeze today, too, to move things out. Today, actually, was a good day to do laundry, but I didn't do that. I did clean out the fridge. It still stinks a little bit, though. Not as bad as it did. I had some meat go bad while I was in Oklahoma. And, yeah, this is the second time I've taken everything out and scrubbed the thing down, and it still stinks. It still has an odor to it. I guess I don't know if it leached into the plastic or what.
Oh no.
Ugh.
So I use disinfectant.
You know what, Tab?
Hospital disinfects, and next time
Take that 73.
Ooh, that would be nice.
That sounds nice.
I can't even get the AC down to that inside. Dear Lord. I think right now my AC is finally off at 75, but it's probably going to kick back on any moment.
Oh no, mine's on full blast blowing out my back.
Still say you should get like a little doghouse thing.
Yeah, we're still looking at that. We're still looking at ideas for air conditioning. Yeah, build like a little doghouse, put an air conditioner in it, and then duct the air into the house. So, and that's a possibility. I'm not good at metal work and don't have the tools to build a good metal duct, but we can make something work. And then it's like, hey, Mom, I saw you. Where'd you go?
There's tape. You could do a lot with tape, okay?
Yes, you can. Hey,
but
Mom,
I would just like.
You say hi to everybody? Oh no, you don't like being held like a baby anymore.
Oh, he's a kitty.
He's a kitty. It's the void.
Oh, he's a cute.
Yeah. And Void wants up on the desk. She wants attention.
Well, yeah. She's a cute voice, so she needs it.
Yeah. She's just been, since I left for a week, I came back, she's been very affectionate.
Jane was that way.
Aw.
I mean, she's actually gone back to sleeping in bed with me.
Oh, how sweet.
Or maybe she's just trying to like suck up to Dad, so he's nice to her and her babies again.
Yeah,
I could see that.
August 12th. Uh-huh. Yeah, I hope they have good coat hangers. Because you'll definitely be pregnant by then. And she sits there and cleans herself. She's sitting on the arm of my chair. Y'all just can't see it now. But I don't know. I am, as far as the Chevron deference, I'm happier with the ruling now. I was ecstatic on Thursday or Friday when it came out.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking ATF. Fuck the ATF and their stupid rules. But after we got to thinking about it and talking about it all weekend, and just one by one, all these other 3-letter agencies popped into my head. It's like, what's this mean for everybody? And now that they're not going to go out and just throw everything out, I feel a lot better about it. But they're still open to legal challenges.
It's a double-edged sword, I think. I think it's a good thing that there's going to be some genuine oversight to it. But at the same time, I can see both sides of that. But I think it's a step in the right direction, if nothing else. Yeah. Maybe not a permanent solution, but maybe try to rein it in a little bit.
And I'm sure if some type of emergency pops up, they can push through something rapidly, and then they'll go back and debate it later. It depends on what they consider an emergency. Like maybe Trump getting elected and the Democrats decide, oh, it's the end of the world. We're going to lock everything down. You watch, do it. I tell you, COVID or something else is coming. If Trump gets elected, it will be here by spring. I promise you.
I'm sorry, you said that, and I could not stop but think of anything other than, and I know I'm probably going to piss off some of the nerds saying this, Star Wars, the episode 3, how Palpatine has the emergency powers that he never surrenders and ends up overtaking it all. That's what that reminds me of. I know it's not a perfect example, but you said that, and that's what that reminds me of.
Yes, it does.
A debate.
Oh, the debate was it was horrible all the way around. Trump started off okay, other than the fact he wouldn't stay on target. He kept wanting to go back to what they were talking about before. And and old poopy pants over there, he was just waiting for somebody to say ice cream time. So
Well, and what got me is I've been watching everything, not everything, but I've been watching enough since the debate. Everybody's like, oh no, our president doesn't have any kind of mental cognition. Like it's this big fucking surprise all of a sudden.
Oh yeah, I was watching that. Somebody it was they're acting like this is the first day they realized this. And it's like you're either stupid or you're lying. I think it was Tucker Carlson said that.
That's not wrong.
No.
Or just willful ignorance. But yeah, like I saw a meme that said, the next debate, Biden will have an interpreter, and it showed Ozzy Osbourne.
I don't think there's going to be another debate. There's already there's been a lot going on the last couple of days. They're wanting him to step down and not run. But the thing is, they have nobody they can throw up at short notice. They can beat Trump.
But who saw that? Who saw that coming? Yeah. Oh my goodness!
Right.
Now, as far as the powers of succession, technically they could turn around and put Kamala Harris up there. I mean, it wouldn't be anything for the national convention to say, okay, we're swapping these out.
But
yes,
but they don't want her in there.
Fuck no.
But she won't win. She definitely won't beat Trump. She's an idiot.
And that's the problem.
She's
that
AOC's
right there
sister.
is that
You're right. That's the problem. We didn't have any good candidates at all this time.
No,
we didn't have any good candidates, and it was just it's 2020 all over again. Only this time he's more mentally not there.
And you can't throw COVID out there again as a no emergency.
Right. Oh, see, that's where Chevron deference comes in. They won't be able to do that as easily next time.
And that's
all
what
the mandates. That was just ridiculous.
And that's what gets me is that's why I think it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
While they are taking control away going forward, at the same time, what can they utilize and invoke and twist?
Well, they're not taking control away. Let's call a spade a spade. It's the alphabet agencies were given powers that they never should have.
Absolutely.
Or they were given like, okay, you're kind of the experts. So we're going to yield to your expertise. But they ran with that, and they ran rampant, and they way overstepped. And so it's not so much that we're taking the power away from them. We're just going, hey, we're going to recognize that you're experts, but
what the fuck?
You ran with this. Yeah.
Let's talk to some other experts. Let's get a second opinion, a medical second opinion before we force people to get the jab.
Like Tab is saying, comments, keep the experts from continuing to get paid off.
Right. And that's just
so something is healthy. Yeah.
Nothing at all has ever been done to Fauci or anybody for that whole mess.
No comment.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
But, other than just having his reputation just ripped apart because nobody trusts him anymore. And I hope to hell they close the Wuhan lab where they were working on some dangerous shit funded by the U.S. government and Fauci.
Well, I mean, as soon as they close that one, they'll just create another one.
Right.
Or they'll move all of that stuff from that one to one of the other several that they have.
Yeah.
Because let's be real, if you think that's the only one out there, I've got some oceanfront property in Nebraska to sell you.
Not.
Right. There was this one story that Ray found, and I cannot remember the specifics off the top of my head, but it was on the California coast, to where this lab was shut down, but there had been strains of all these different viruses and whatnot that were foreign imported, and it was just like this little rat hole in the California city, and it's just like you never heard any kind of coverage on this.
Oh, have y'all? I don't know if y'all keep up with space. I'm also a space nerd. Our space station now has some super viruses on board that they've grown in the vacuum of space that are totally resistant to everything.
Wonderful.
I hope to hell they know how they're handling all that.
That does not surprise me.
Well, they're also talking about lately that they just gave SpaceX a contract to deorbit the space station in 3 or 5 years or whatever when they're decommissioning it. And I hope they get rid of all that shit before they let it burn up and come back to our atmosphere.
We'll find out.
But I'm glad they are doing experiments like that, because you need to find out, what works on Earth and what doesn't work in space. Somebody gets a cold, you might not just be able to give them an aspirin in space. Aspirin might kill them. Our bodies do some weird things in zero G. So, I mean, I'm glad they're doing
zero G could.
I just hope they're safe about it.
Yep.
That's funny.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, we are relying on fellow human beings, and fellow corporations to have our best interest in mind.
Right.
And to be safe. And, there are reasons that OSHA was created. There are reasons the board was created. There are reasons that these regulatory, agencies were put into place, were created because people got stupid and power hungry and forgot,
Well, even when it comes to the Second Amendment, I mean, I still don't believe that everybody needs a nuclear warhead in their backyard either, because most people can't handle that kind of power. Our federal government can't handle it. I mean, we're the only ones to use one, and we still got them. I mean, now we have them for different reasons, but
And I think you've got a point. There is a reason for regulatory oversight. Absolutely, right. Yes.
Exactly.
But the all-time question is how much is too much and how far is too far.
Right. I don't want my life micromanaged by people that don't even know me.
Exactly. But at the same time, do you want to trust Joe Public that the FBI has stopped 10 terrorist attacks in the last month, so to speak? It's kind of like, it feels like, what do you want to know and what do you don't want to know? It's right. That catch-22, in my opinion.
Yeah. And this weekend I watched the whole thing on J. Edgar Hoover. That man was dangerous.
And the formation of the FBI.
Yes. Well, the reformation. It was the Bureau of Investigations is what it was called ahead of time. And until he got in there, and he totally re-outfitted it. And they still use a lot of his same procedures today. But they're just not
I believe it.
They're not as shouldn't be as political now as they were. But I don't know. And I don't know that much about the FBI. I don't give the FBI much credit. I don't give many of our government agencies much credit.
I want to say, trust in federal agencies is at an all-time low.
Yeah. Oh, we should have never trusted the federal government to have all the power that it does now anyway. So,
what was it that the Native Americans said? The most dangerous words you can ever hear is, "I'm here from the government. I'm from the government, and I'm here to help you."
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm misquoting.
I believe it originally came from the Indians, but it was Reagan that requoted it in one of his speeches.
Okay.
Or one.
I'm gonna jump off of it. Y'all have fun.
I think that was during his electoral race. I think that was one of his speeches.
Okay.
I can't remember exactly, but I do remember him saying it. I am that old. And back then, I was really blind to a lot of the politics. Yeah, was it 84? No, 86. I think it was the first time I voted. I think it was maybe Reagan's second term. I'm not sure.
And now I'm feeling like stupid young.
Well,
and you're absolutely right, Tab.
But it's my and and I blame my generation because a lot of my generation is like me. Let's just ignore it. Let's just concentrate on ourselves, and we didn't concentrate enough on what our federal government was doing, which is obvious over the last 40 years with Chevron deference. It was put in as a good thing, and it got abused.
Absolutely.
You know.
No, it's. I agree with what. Oh my God, freaking! I'm brain farting with what Pius was saying. Absolutely, oversight, that creation, it wasn't a bad thing, but it's gone from, hey, let's help out, keep an eye out. I'm gonna do whatever the fuck I want to.
Right. I don't know. Does anybody else have anything to say? Tab, you want to jump into Discord? $13 people in here? Come on, there's got to be more people in here. I mean, y'all don't have to type in chat, but the whole reason for the stream was to have a discussion about this. I just wanted to be as educated as I could to at least put out the facts. A lot of people didn't even realize this shit happened. Nobody's really paying attention.
And that's why I was asking, like, hey, you're mentioning it. Obviously, there's some importance to it, but what the fuck is the importance of it? Right. And it makes sense.
Yeah. And when it first came out, like I said, I thought, you know, and like I said, the case was over the U.S. Fisheries Service or whatever. But I was thinking, yeah, ATF can't come up with more stupid shit without getting it approved, or at least there's a way to fight it now, easier than before.
Well, and it's so easy when Supreme Court decisions go out because, like, big headlines, it'll catch attention.
Yeah.
It'll catch, people's eye for a minute, but it's not dug into if it's not well known. Right. And so being educated about it is a good way to go.
And it was very hard to get myself educated on this morning. Now, as far as, the 1984 decision and all that, I could find all the stuff on that. But all this stuff, nobody was talking about it. Like I said, I downloaded the 114-page document. Good God. I was going cross-eyed after like the first 5 pages of reading legalese.
I can't do that shit no more.
I can't either. I mean, on something that big, no. But I don't know. And like I said, I wanted to ask everybody else's opinion. Because like I said, I know I live in a box. The 2A is really the only thing I really pay attention to. I should pay attention to more. But, and most people, and I'm retired, I have the luxury of being able to sit here in front of 5 screens and Google shit. Most Americans have to go to work. They're working, working 2 jobs, or they have, 2 income households. They don't have time to sit down and go. They come home, they're tired, the kids are pestering them. They just want to eat a meal, watch some TV, and go to bed. And I understand that. I was in the rat race for a long time before I dropped out. But at least it happened at a good time, because my temperament for people was rapidly going downhill. And stupidity. And maybe it's just my age.
I think the older you get, the more of a I don't give a damn, or my give a damn's busted comes out.
Well, and I give a lot more respect to the generations ahead of me, older than me now, because they had things a certain way. They didn't like the way things were changing, and they got old and grumpy because of it. And without lumping everybody into a group, millennials friggin' drive me friggin' nuts sometimes. Not all millennials. I know some of y'all, the millennial, that's really a very big age range, but some of them just,
I think Tab has a really good point. I think it's making strides to giving power back to the people.
It's a good
step. I agree, Tab. That's a great point, and it's a good step.
Yeah. And I'd like to see our federal government continue to whittle itself down.
Absolutely.
By leveling the what do you call them?
Leveling the playing field.
Yeah, leveling the power around and the oversight. because now, you know, each branch has oversight over certain things and each other. So, you know, to keep each other in check. So one part of that way the president and his army just doesn't friggin' take over and throw out the courts and the Congress. You know, it doesn't work that way. What do they call it? Governmental oversight, I guess. I can't remember. But there's a term for it.
Regulatory oversight.
Yeah.
I think is the quote unquote proper correct term. I may be wrong there too.
And that's Congress's job, and they are elected officials. And that way, if we don't like what they're doing, we can vote them out and vote somebody else in.
And the thing is,
Supreme Court's
Congress,
a little different, but
well, it's senators, representatives, governors. Yeah. That was never meant to be a lifelong thing.
No, it wasn't supposed to be.
And it was meant to have it. I think term limits should be a thing.
Yep, everywhere.
And that yes, absolutely. That's a whole nother topic for me though.
And even working in the government, if you work for a government agency, whether it's the VA, Social Security, whatever, I think there needs to be a limit in there too.
Absolutely.
I mean, maybe not. Let's limit it at 20 years. Because you still want older or more experienced people in there, but you don't want people in there so long that they become untouchable. Like
absolutely.
Hoover. I don't know how long he was in the FBI. He managed.
That was a bright light.
Yeah, he convinced every president that, hey, I've got dirt on you, so don't fuck with me. he pretty much blackmailed folks without blackmailing them.
Yeah. Oh, I'm gonna drop off a VC real quick, but I'll hop back into chat in the stream.
Okie doke.
Thanks.
But anybody else? Or is that about it? Anything else y'all want to discuss? Like I said, there were some other things. Let's move that back over there. We can go over the Trump ruling today. Let's go to NBC News, since it was the first one to pop up.
In the world. It's an office that not only tests your judgment, perhaps even more importantly, it's an office that can test your character. Because you not only face moments when you need the courage to exercise the full power of the presidency,
well, you're the last person
you also face moments where you need the wisdom to respect the limits of the power of the office of the presidency. This nation was founded on the principle that there are no kings in America. Each of us is equal before the law. No one is above the law, not even the President of the United States.
Or your son.
With today's Supreme Court decision on presidential immunity, that fundamentally changed. For all practical purposes, today's decision almost...
They're acting like it changed today. Presidential immunity has always been there. The Supreme Court just ruled on this covering what happened with Trump. That's all it was.
Certainly means that there are virtually no limits on what a president can do.
No, that's not true.
This is a fundamentally new principle.
No, it's not.
And it's a dangerous precedent.
Because
the power of the office will no longer be constrained by the law, even including the Supreme Court of the United States. The only limits will be self-imposed by the president alone. This decision today has continued the court's attack in recent years on a wide range of long-established legal principles in our nation, from gutting voting rights and civil rights, to taking away a woman's right to choose, to today's decision that undermines the rule of law of this nation. Nearly 4 years ago, my predecessor sent a violent mob to the U.S. Capitol to stop the peaceful transfer of power.
And that's already been proven.
We all saw it with our own eyes. We sat there and watched it happen that day. Attack on the police. the ransacking at the Capitol, a mob literally hunting down the House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, gallows erected to hang the Vice President, Mike Pence. I think it's fair to say it's one of the darkest days in the history of America. Now the man who sent
That's
that mob
their First
to the US
Amendment
Capitol
right to do things
is
like that.
facing potential criminal conviction for what happened that day. And the American people deserve to have an answer in the courts before the upcoming election. The public has a right to know the answer about what happened on January 6th before they are asked to vote again this year. Now, because of today's decision, that is highly, highly unlikely. It's a terrible disservice to the people of this nation. So now the American people have to do what the courts should have been willing to do, but will not. The American people have to render a judgment about Donald Trump's behavior. The American people must decide whether Donald Trump's assault on our democracy on January 6th makes him unfit for public office in the highest office in the land. The American people must decide if Trump's embrace of violence to preserve his power is acceptable. Perhaps most importantly, the American people must decide if they want to entrust the president once again, the presidency, to Donald Trump, now knowing he'll be even more emboldened to do whatever he pleases whenever he wants to do it. You know, at the outset of our nation, it was the character of George Washington, our first president, to define the presidency. He believed power was limited, not absolute. And that power always resides with the people, always. Now, over 200 years later, with today's Supreme Court decision, once again, it will depend on the character of the men and women who hold that presidency that are going to define the limits of the power of the presidency, because the law will no longer do it. I know I will respect the limits of the presidential powers I have for 3.5 years, but any president, including Donald Trump, will now be free to ignore the law. I concur with Justice Sotomayor's dissent today. Here's what she said. She said, in every use of official power, the president is now a king above the law. With fear for our democracy, I dissent. End of quote. So should the American people dissent. I dissent. May God bless you all, and may God help preserve our democracy.
All right. Is it just me? Or does that not look like our president? It's the banjo boy from Deliverance. Does he not remind you of our president?
At Hallie Jackson is following the politics.
I don't know. All right, we'll turn that off. I'm sorry.
Of all this, Hallie, former President Trump is already out there declaring victory after this ruling.
That's right, Tom, calling this a big win for the Constitution and democracy, in his words, saying it should end what he describes as the witch hunts against him. Now, this ruling virtually assures his trial will get pushed until after Election Day, and politically, for him, that is a win. But the White House, in a new statement, says nobody is above the law and that the country needs leaders like President Biden who, in their words, respect the justice system and don't tear it down. With his campaign already fundraising off this ruling, Tom.
And Hallie, I know you have some reporting on longtime Trump ally Steve Bannon heading to prison to start his 4-month sentence.
That's right. The former White House senior advisor walking into that Connecticut prison, telling reporters he is proud to serve time. You see it there. He was convicted on charges of contempt of Congress for defying a subpoena to testify before the January 6th committee. He's set to be released the week before Election Day. Tom.
All right, we won't listen to any more of that. Come on, pause that. Never mind, we'll just get off of it. What else did they do? Trump immunity. What else did they do? Here we go, 8 hours ago. Oh. What is this, a short? Presidents have claimed presidential immunity a bunch of times. And all you got to do is go back and listen to that speech anyway. Yeah, this is all election garbage. All right. Let's see what else we got before we close this out. See what this one is. That was a 2-hour-long video. Oh God! Look at that insurrection going on outside the Supreme Court. Oh, that's just awful. Oh, look, they brought a baby. Oh, how could they? Oh, the horror. Look at that. There are people on the opposite sides of the barricades. How are they letting this happen? Sarcasm, folks. Sarcasm. All right, this live is that. All right, that live did nothing. Sorry I wasted your time with that one. Let's see what the other rulings were. Another one, 2 hours. Oh, come on. It's just 2 hours of video outside. All right, I guess that's the only ruling everybody's talking about right now. That came out today. Which I guess will end our stuff here. I guess I close that out. All right, well, we'll just y'all don't need to see my desktop and all my cluttery crap. Here we go. We'll just put the flag up. All right, let's see who we can write out to. I don't know if I'm still up later on. We might try to play a little turbo golf or something like that, depending on what everybody's up to, how they're feeling later. You know, I mean, it is a work day for a lot of folks, but so I could be back. I might not be. I might just be in Discord. Let's see. Oh, everybody's going. I don't see anybody doing just chatting. So, and nobody I really know is on right now. I know it's kind of early for our crew, our folks. I'm not going to take y'all over to official Fat Jesus. We'll leave Tater Dog and his world warships. Well, we can go to Tater Dog. We haven't rated out the Tater Dog. Let's see what Tater Dog's up to.
Yeah, thanks.
Here's my dashboard.
Oh, gotcha, Peckerwood.
Got you, Peckerwood. Us old folks have no chill. All right, let's go by and say hi to Tater Dog. Like I said, he's playing some World Warships. Paranormal. I want to thank everybody for coming out. Thanks for everybody who wanted to participate. And I just ask everybody to, look into this on your own. Not just all the SCOTUS decisions, not just Chevron deference. We need to, especially in an election year, we kind of need to realize what's going on. Stay informed. Personal responsibility. Love you guys, and we will see y'all next time.